Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry.
All right.
So we can get started. So Diana and I made really good progress. We moved through the first 40 pages of the thing with a lot of questions. Some to Robert, some will go to you, of course. Let me share up, like I said, because in the interest of video bandwidth, I'm going to unshare my video so that I can share the document we were working on, which is the policy manual. Let me see. Let me share that now.
I'm looking at it too, so.
Okay, cool. Let me share it up so it's part of the recording.
Yeah, with the public, great.
Let me see.
I don't have anybody else on right now, just us.
But it's being recorded for the
public for later, right?
correct, for posterity.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So here it is, and I'll take this off so that people can follow along. What's really kind of messed up is Google doesn't let you scroll up or down when you're sharing. So let me see. Let me figure out how I can do that.
There must be a way, but I don't know what to tell you, honestly. I'm not as adept either.
I don't remember it being a problem before, so.
Yeah, it looked like last time you were able to do it.
Let's see here.
Yeah, it's giving me a pen. Let me turn that off.
Sure.
Clear all.
And Diana, were you asking how to get to it? I see you're not in it quite yet.
Yeah, I'm looking how to. I know there's a link to it. I can't find it. So, and I think it's in an email somewhere. But if you can put it in the chat, that would probably.
Okay, there we go.
You put it in the.
Okay, so the thing that we're trying to move through here, and I want to keep what's helpful and operationally relevant, without keeping the things that are no longer relevant as we disassociate from the ALA and MLA. And not everything in there is not useful. So I'm trying to kind of go through this. These first 8 pages are heavily referencing ALA type stuff. And so that's kind of what we were moving through.
Mm-hmm.
So going through here, let me get down to.
Well, then let's get Diana set up here so she's still not able to get the document here. I can't give her access. Can you put
Can you put a link in the chat?
Yeah, I was trying to do that, but I can't because I can't share the document. Only John can. So if you could share that folder or the document one more time with her in the chat.
She has access, but I will send her the link because it's.
Yeah, send me the link because I can't find it.
Yeah, just so that she can follow along with whatever we're saying here.
I think you had to do this for me last time too.
Let's see.
Yes, because I watched it happen, but that's okay. You're new to Google Docs and that's all right.
Yeah, I almost never use it, so.
Okay. So if you go into the chat, Diana, in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little bunch of icons. One is chat with everyone.
Yep, I'm in it. Yep. Yeah, I just needed the link, so I'm good.
Okay. So I can close that window up. You can still see my screen, I'm thinking.
Yep, I can still see that. I'm gonna let's see what I'm gonna do. Okay, I'm gonna move that over. I'll move one over to the other monitor so I can see them both at the same. I can see your screen and I can see the document at the same time.
Okay, good. So the things where I just want to make sure that we're not whole cloth deleting guided principles. One of the things we went over real quick, Tori, is this mission statement. I just didn't want to say we don't have a mission statement. Of course, we want to say something about what we're about, And so just as a placeholder, I put this one in here. It's our mission is to enrich the community by providing free access to knowledge, fostering lifelong learning, and creating a welcoming space for discovery, connection, and growth. I just feel like that's a little more like a library mission statement than the one above. And, you know.
Do you want me to say something on that? And
Yeah,
just give you
comment
the
on it.
history of our mission statement. So the mission statement was revised a couple years ago, and that was a process that took months of kind of deliberation amongst staff. We talked about it with the board in depth and a number of public meetings, and that was the one that it was changed to. It was something else for about 10 years. It was a wordier thing, just kind of going with some of the industry communication standards of trying to make it short, active with keywords. And then that was done as the beginning part of the new strategic planning process, that last round of strategic planning. And then the entire strategic plan is based in the mission statement, so that every leg, every arm of the strategic plan traces back to one piece of how does it build access? How does it build community through access? How does it build community through innovation? How does it build community through engagement, so that we're being internally accountable to the principles of the library, that whole bigger group and kind of community process to come up with that mission statement, that sort of the strategic plan that we're still working through tracks back to that. So, I mean, your statement is lovely. I mean, I think it's a nice, I don't personally object to that, but I would just say, I feel like number one, if we changed it, it would kind of leave the way in which we have parts of our strategic plan that are still being worked on for the next year or two, kind of without that anchor, if that makes sense. I don't think you certainly could do it, but I would at least talk about it at a public meeting and kind of think through the process that this board, it's okay for a board to think through that. And it is a board decision. But think through, since last time, like I said, there were, the board asked staff to kind of come up with committees to think through, not just words that described what we were doing more succinctly, but what we wanted to do, needed to do, that kind of summarize the bulk of the work, and then to kind of map under those access, innovation, engagement terms exactly what the library was already doing in each of those buckets, and then to figure out it for the next 3 years what would be happening after that. Now, your new director, or the library's new director, once that person is hired, will certainly be here for another strategic planning process, and you guys will be too. So, and that I think as early as 2027, 2026 would be a time. I mean, we still have enough to work through, especially with the unexpected transition of Renee. It's kind of delayed things. But I would just say, in the past, any changes to that have been hand in hand with a new strategic planning kind of cycle.
Understood. Thank you. So we'll take this under advisement and have it connect to the strategic plan. We are getting a new ED, so that's the best time to do. I don't think this is going to be a problem, but we can take it back to the board.
Well, and that strategic plan was not, it was a pretty short-term one. It was sort of the one that Renee, and I think that's very natural. So the library's new director, I think that's a perfect time for you guys to work with them and for them to come up and say, it's that time again. And again, that was a process that was done hand in hand with the board. So, I mean, they would sort of talk to staff in open meetings about progress. Renee would tell them the plan and the procedure and where there might be community input or board input, and then they would move forward together. So I think that's a great thing to kind of talk to your new director about, and to include in questions when you guys are interviewing candidates for the new director.
Thank you. So we'll go with this for now, take it back to the board under advisement. For my thinking, the mission statement drives the strategic planning, not the other way around. So I like this better, but we'll let the board decide.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. The mission statement did drive the strategic. So before the new strategic plan began, the mission statement was revised in a way to be, to guide the process of strategic planning, basically, so that the mission statement was, because there was an acknowledgement that the old one was too wordy and unwieldy and kind of, outdated in terms of style. And so
Right.
the mission statement process crafting came first, and then everything we were doing was mapped out under that new statement. And then the strategic plan was, again, kind of nested within those access, innovation, engagement buckets, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So,
No, it makes total sense.
Yep.
My only criticism of this is it's too broad. It doesn't,
gotcha.
okay, so we'll,
Yep.
we'll take it back to the board and figure it out with the new ED and the.
Sounds
Okay.
great.
So the other pieces here, there's a lot of First Amendment comment and things. And so I've made a lot of notes and done a lot of research. First Amendment is an important amendment to the Constitution. And I think we all need to recognize that there are some restrictions to the First Amendment. Obscenity is one of the ones. Child pornography is another one. They're all in here. They're listed. And we also have a lot of support in state law. The tough thing is going to be getting a legal document that will guide the staff, in terms of what that is, what does it look like, and how can we have a library that is both expressing viewpoint, but not promoting age inappropriate material to children. So that's going to be the document that Robert's going to have to supply to us. But, this all access to everybody and anything is really kind of not a true statement with regard to First Amendment protections. It's not protected speech. So we have to figure out, how do we do that? How do we give adults the access to viewpoints and not restrict that? I did have a question for you. I know if you don't know, tell me. You got to go back and do research.
I'll probably be doing that a lot during the meeting. So, but please ask.
Yes. So censorship and banning, we talk a lot about that.
Mhm.
Have, at least in my time, I don't recall any book being banned or censored. To your knowledge, has that ever happened? Have we banned a book or censored a book? If you don't know of any, then okay.
I mean, no, I don't think so. I mean, our policies we have literally a policy on censorship that says you're not supposed to do that. So no, not that I know of.
Okay, so it's just simply not true that we're censoring books.
Who?
And I don't believe.
I'm sorry, where are you getting that we're censoring books? Like, where in the policies? I'm confused where we're starting from here.
I've heard some people in public comments say that we are proposing to ban and censor books, and I'm not knowing where that's coming from, because the board's never been asked to do that, and we, as a rule, would have to take a look at the material, but I'm not aware of that. So I just want to kind of deal with that in policy.
So your question was, has the library ever censored materials? And as far as I know, the answer to that is no, the library has not censored materials. Okay. Now, if you're talking about people saying that you're proposing it, I mean, that might be a different thing.
I'm not even aware of that, but
yeah, so the answer is no, the library, as far as I know, has not censored. And I think it's in part because, that's part of why these policies have been adopted, to make that clear to the public, that's part of the operation. What do we call it? Not operational guiding principles, that was sort of the guiding principle of the library, is that we don't censor materials. We have materials for everyone. And our goal is to provide finding aids and ways for people to find the materials that suit them best, but otherwise not interfere with their ability to get the materials they need. Of course, unless they're minors, in which case we put protections and restrictions into place so that parents can help their children find what's right for them and their family. But outside of that, it's not that the library as an actor is about providing access, not preventing access, and then providing tools for people to be able to access what they want, including librarians, right? That can kind of help them figure out what they're looking for and how and where physically to find it inside the library.
I'm trying to come. I'm sorry, Diana, did you have something?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think some of the public commenters who talk about book banning have an extremely broad definition of the word ban.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so too. So the problematic thing is we accept and endorse the American Library Association's Library Bill of Rights, which is no longer a true statement. However, I think it's fair to say that in general, we don't censor, because you just said we don't, and I'm not advocating that we ever do that. If an adult wants to see a viewpoint that isn't even mainstream, they should be able to get that in the adult section. It's just where, you know, it's a obscene or age inappropriate thing. It's not that we're censoring it. We just don't want to put that in front of a minor child. So we have to get guidance from Robert on how do we word us. We don't censor. I mean, I think that that's kind of clear. We don't do that.
Well, I would also say that we don't provide age inappropriate material to people that are, I mean, there are lots of materials in the library, but we are not promoting or providing age inappropriate material to anyone. I mean, if you have a card, you can get materials. If you are a minor, then your family helps you figure out which materials are appropriate. All of the materials are put specifically in sections of the library that are appropriate for those ages. And then what a librarian does, or what the library does, is, like I said, provide finding aids and tools for people to be able to figure out which part of the library they need to look in for the materials they want for themselves, or if you're saying, like, if they're a minor, for their. So I guess what I'm saying is we don't provide or promote age inappropriate materials, and never have, to people that are age inappropriate. That's not really for us to do either, and
Right.
we haven't done that either. So I guess what I'm saying is, yes, the library has never censored, and it also has never provided age inappropriate materials. Now, I mean, individual people may feel like some materials in the library are not appropriate for them or for their kids at any age, but that's sort of the individual decision of the person, is sort of how a library is structured, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm understanding.
No, you're making sense, and I'm agreeing with what you're saying. I'm thinking
same.
It may not be true for all the material in the children's section, and that's why we need more guidance on that one. So I'll look to Robert. Okay.
Well,
so
I'm not aware of anything age appropriate, nor any promotion of age inappropriate materials.
Okay. So let's see, donations policy. I don't have anything to really correct on that. And if there's anything in here, Tori, that needs to get updated on the operational side, that's kind of why we wanted your feedback on here.
Sure. And in the past, as we come across policies like that, generally that's where the staff and your new the library's new director will be a good opportunity for that too, as that person kind of gets to know the staff and the operations and the policies. I think we often just stumble across them when we're looking at a policy where I think maybe I've used this example with you guys before, but when we were going through updating these in previous times, there was one, for example, that if you check out a VHS tape, you have to bring it back and it has to already be rewound, or you could get a fine. So we obviously don't even check out VHS tapes anymore. So that's like a very extreme example. But anytime we come across little things like that, we often, staff will bring it to the director, and the director will bring it to the board proactively. And so I think, Diana, you've been around for a few times when we've had policy updates, or if something in state or federal law changes that requires some wording to change in our policies, then we would bring that to you guys to explain why we're proposing a change, and then you guys can change it. So
right. The other thing here, and I did see some things, and I've not received work behind the library desk, but there's a one about hygiene, like they bring it back and it has biohazard on it or some other terrible thing. All that stuff needs to stay the same. We don't need to touch that. I am concerned, because of my professional background, about the confidentiality of library records. And I think we can do a little better on that one with regard to not collecting information that we don't need. So that's why I kind of did a refresh of the request for reconsideration. Let me see if I
saw you just shared that. So by
Okay.
the way, the requests for reconsiderations are considered closed patron records under that policy. So
Right.
of course, there's the sunshine law policy that is the main driver for what's open and closed records. But there's also a library specific part of state law. I was explaining that to Robert in that one time in one of those first establishment meetings we had with him. And this is not closed information. This is public information. That when I was explaining to him that, when he looked through the sunshine laws for what is considered closed, there's also this part referenced right here and the part that you just had up right before that, the 182.815 and 182.817. So that actually has a state specific definition. It's two portions of a library record. And a library record is a separate kind of record that is protected as a closed record. And that includes any kind of personal information, because we have to get a lot of personal information for when someone gets a new card, you get tons of information about them. And then library records also considers closed any kind of interaction with the library about like what books that person is checking out. If they have, so that includes actually both the content of any kind of request for purchase. If someone says like, I want to request a book about puppies and a specific book, that request for purchase actually is a public record. The fact that they requested it is public, but we would have to redact what material they asked for, because that's considered a part of their library record. Basically, anything they do with the library that identifies them as being connected to specific topics or interests. It has to do with donor information is included in a lot of that. So if they give donations, some of that can be protected. That's all in this policy. That also means, for example, a couple times this has happened with trustees. Maybe we had trustees a couple years ago who just changed their address and went to the front desk to change it, and then would tell me like, oh, I just changed my email, just check at the front desk. But legally, I can't go into their library card record to get their updated information. I have to get that from them directly, unless it's for like a real library purpose. So if it was for a board meeting, maybe, but I couldn't just, like, staff are disallowed, not just by ethics, but by state law, from using any kind of patron information. So that also includes requests for reconsideration. Now, the Secretary of State's office, in his administrative guidance that came out a couple of years ago that I think you guys are familiar with, which had sort of new protections put into place about being very clear about labeling parts of the library as containing different age-specific material, which we were already doing, but it just forced us to kind of write that down into a policy so that the public had more transparency about how we do that, and trying to put protections into place to make sure that people who are coming to look for materials know where to look. And if they are minors or their parents want them to only have access to certain age group material, they know where to look. He then required that we start posting these requests for reconsideration and the outcome. So you have to post what someone requests to have removed and the outcome of it. So we do post these forms, but we redact that personal information because that's a part of the library record of that patron. That's a part of their interaction with the library, because maybe they have to actually say, yeah, I read this book and here's what I think about it. So the fact that they read it and they think about it is not so much, but their personal information is redacted from that.
Right. And I've done a draft confidentiality document that, like I said, this is something that I'm keenly aware of, and it has been, there's only two exceptions. Like you said, the patron releases it themselves, or there's a court order, and it is the library's responsibility to resist any informal request by a patron that does not comply with state law. So you're right.
That's in there.
You're right in that anything that connects an activity to the individual person, their PII, should be kept highly confidential. And the things we're doing now the things we're doing now are putting us, we just need to review it more carefully, because the data retention and the redaction, they just need to be looked at a little bit more like what I've got here.
Well, I know we talked about that a little bit, but there are plenty of things that do have people's personal information that are still public, considered public or sunshineable. This is more for people who are literally using the library to check out materials. More in that vein is where this extra layer of protection from the state comes. And there's a line in there for that one part, the library, blah, 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 basically that we do not give out information that is protected under that unless there is a proper showing of good cause in a court of competent jurisdiction. So exactly what you're saying, like unless, like your two exceptions, unless there's a warrant, and then them releasing it. I mean, we're not, so we would never want to be in the business of having individual granular interactions with patrons where they give us permission to release then they can just release it themselves. You know what I mean? Like for library purposes, if it's supposed to be closed, it's going to stay closed unless we get, it's not even actually just any court order. And, it's not even just like a request from the police or anything like that. It has to be, a proper showing of good cause, so like it's more than even just a court order.
It's not that. I don't know if you're familiar with the California Consumer Protection Act and the right to be forgotten. There's a lot of law that is coming into place today that allows customers and consumers to see the data that you have on them. So it could happen that a customer says, I want to see everything you've got on me. Well, how many books I've checked out, what books they are. I want to see that. And we would, with or without a court order, we would have to give that to them. We don't have it in Missouri yet, but believe me, it's coming soon, where they say, I want to be completely deleted from your system. All my records, everything, I have the right to be purged from your system as a person. California has it. I think Maine, and there's a couple other states that have that.
Well, if the law changes, that would certainly trigger a need to edit this for sure so that we're in compliance. And that would be, we would probably get guidance from the state librarian somewhat, and then we could check with our attorney after we kind of draft something. As far as I know, there's nothing, certainly someone can say, I don't want a library card anymore, but, and we don't keep records of everything everyone ever checks out. People can do that themselves in their own Cool Cat accounts. So and that's the same way that they can view what their children are checking out. When you create your Cool Cat account in your login information in the settings, you can decide whether you keep like a reading list of what you're reading, but the library does not keep. The only things that stay in our system are if there's a fine attached to returning something and like the last one or two checkouts. And then we keep the numbers of checkouts, but we're not keeping, like if you checked out 20 books 6 months ago, I can't tell that unless you were the very last person to check out the book. So the system will keep the last book, like the last couple of people that checked it out, just in case it comes back damaged, so that you can trace that for fine purposes. But so you could delete that, but like, let's say that same person had sent emails to the director about something or asked a question. We cannot purge records that are kept in a director's email account and are sunshineable, for example.
No, I don't think we need to.
At least right now. Now, if the law has changed, please let us know and we'll look at it.
That's not the use case I'm proposing. The use case I'm proposing is, like, for example, and this is kind of why I did an update of the form for the challenge, is we were asking previously, do you have any children? I'm not sure that's relevant. If you're here's why it was relevant. That was actually added during it's part of the requirement from the Secretary of State's office for his administrative guidance, because he says that something to the effect of something about how the challenges that need to be posted are for people with children. People who have children. I'll have to look back through. I remember that was part of why we added that, so that we could gather that information and be compliant. Okay, but what about those people who have grandchildren or their guardians? So that's kind of not,
I think you would just put that in there, but I mean, we could potentially take that out, but I would want to look. I remember, Renee, I didn't draft that form and I wasn't totally, but I think we were all trying to figure out to make sure we were compliant with anything new. And that was one of them, that he said something about how the ones that were required to be posted were the ones that were challenging, for children's, something like that, materials. I'll have to check to be sure, but it had something to do with the administrative guidance that was added.
Yeah, you're probably right, Secretary of State. My other question to you, operationally, do we need to collect, hold on. Let me share this. So do we need to collect home address, city, state, zip code? I guess we need a way to contact the person, phone and email, which would be redacted if we post it. But would it be, is the library card number confidential?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's a part of your library record too, because if someone came in and didn't have their card, they could say, my library card number is this. And staff should be checking to see, they would be checking to see, they'd probably say, like, show me an ID before I issue a new one. But also library card numbers are used to access the public computers. So someone could get your library card number and then come in and use it as a way to access the public computer, which is no big deal unless they do something illegal on that public computer with your library card number, which is the only reason why we pay attention to what happens on the public computers. Like if some crime happened, if someone did some kind of like internet fraud or something on the computer, then we could try to figure out when that happened and try to figure out who was using the computer at that time. So yes, the library card number is there. I'm gonna, while we're talking, you can keep talking, but I'll look at, try to find out what we redact, because I know Renee was very careful to work with the attorney at the time to make sure that we were both compliant with what Secretary Ashcroft was asking us to do. And again, most of it we were already doing. We just had to make sure to explain to the public a little better. Like I said, there were a few policies that were passed, make a few modifications to this form to make sure we were capturing what they were wanting us to capture. And but I don't know for sure if we need the address, city and state. I mean, if that's what you're asking, I mean, I think an email maybe, and maybe library card number. But again, I don't think you have to have a library card to make a request for reconsideration. I don't think that's a part of I don't think you have to have a library card to make a request.
No, the only reason I asked that is because if we had an identifier for the person that was not confidential, we could just list that and we would have all the information and it wouldn't have to be on the form. But if you're holding that as a unique identifier, that's what a PII number is, like a social security number.
Sure.
Then we can't use that number. We have to do something more like this, which that's okay. I do want to get rid of the, do you have a child? Because, I think.
So on the part that's posted, it looks like they took that out. They just left in, this is regarding that portion, please describe the content and what other comments would you like to make? So that's how they didn't even like mark out the redaction. It looks like they just kind of, I'm just looking to see, because again, that wasn't really, my job was not involved in that exactly, but it doesn't identify the person at all, takes out that information. And is the child part, was it at the bottom or the top? I can't see it. Well, it's not on these that are posted. So if you have access to the internet, that's on the library's policies page. On that drop down menu where you usually go to Board of Trustees for your stuff, there's the policies. It says Christian County Library policies, and then there's a request for reconsideration. And if you click on the year, you can see the complaint itself and then Renee's letter about whether it was retained, moved, like relocated within the library or removed. And then while you're talking, I'll look through to see no event. Okay, here you go. The library. So in Ashcroft's final rule, and I can send this to you after the meeting, no problem, or put it maybe just right after this, I'll drop it in the folder. In section F, it's like the last section of part 1. The library has or will adopt a written, publicly accessible library materials challenge policy, which of course we already had, but by which any parent or guardian of a minor within the library district may dispute or challenge that library's age-appropriate designation affixed to any presentation, event, material, or display. So what he's saying is they have to be a parent of a minor living in the district. They don't have to have a library card. They have to be a parent of a minor living within the district in order to dispute age-appropriate materials in presentations, events, materials, displays in the library, and that the results of those will be published. So that's why we put that in there, because I mean, that doesn't mean they can't challenge materials, but if they're challenging it because they say it's age appropriate, his rule says they have to be a parent or a guardian. Like you said, a guardian is included. So I'll download this and throw this into the drive for you. This is just an excerpt from the actual, it's nestled in a bigger administrative rule hosting, but it's just one page on its own. So it's not that, but so that's why that's in there, because we don't, this also drives what we have to post. So we don't, you know, we post them all, but I don't know. We're just trying to follow his rule, I think is the point. Like that we only have to, that doesn't mean like you're not a parent. Well, you're a parent, you're not a parent or guardian. Let's see, parent or guardian of a minor. So you're not a parent of guardian of a minor, you're a grandparent. You can dispute plenty of materials. And honestly, until recent times, most of the disputes we got were not about age appropriateness. They would be about maybe the accurateness of the content, or maybe someone thinks that there's a better book. Like this happened a lot when they declassified Pluto as a planet. So we would have a lot of space books that still talked about Pluto, and some people would say, maybe you should remove the ones that still say that, since that's not up-to-date information. And I don't remember if we removed anything, but that's just an example of something that's not about being age inappropriate.
Yep.
So, anyway.
So that gets us through the reconsideration form. Since you popped that in the folder, I'll take a look at it and see if it's still
see what you
relevant.
think. It's the F one, and if that changes anything.
Yeah.
Also, that form, just to not get too nuclear, but so that would be what I think is a pretty clear example of procedure, which would be internal. So you're working with the new director. You guys would change a policy, which you do, you know, as we've talked about with Robert and others, you guys have the right to kind of set the policies that govern what happens in the library. And then your executive director works within that to come up with different procedures and mechanisms that are used within the library, procedures and that are compliant with your policy. So that would be a case where you guys, if there's no actual change in the policy, certainly you could put on a board meeting thing to review that form, have your director talk through why they want certain things or don't, or why they think they're required, kind of like we're doing now. And then that person would help you figure out what you know, if you had suggestions, I'm sure they would be fine with looking into those and changing them. So just to say, it's linked to there, but it's not actually the policy itself.
Yeah, I think that works. This is all standard third party. We have to hold all of our part. We don't have much in terms of data storage. It all goes up to the cloud, which is something else. So it falls under our third party vendors. Anybody who's like Sierra or whoever's collecting data for us in the cloud, they would have to be compliant with this stuff. To my knowledge, have you guys ever been audited for security?
What do you mean by that?
Did you ever have a third party or even an internal person check to make sure that we are encrypting data, that the data is safe at rest and in transport?
So our IT people are kind of constantly looking at security stuff. Yes. And then the vendors that we work with, they get a copy of this policy when we first sign those contracts. And then there's a policy page of the website, because we can't control for sure how other people, or like third-party vendors that we're contracted with, they know what our policy is. They say that they are compliant with it when we, you know, when we contract with them. But then we also have a portion of that privacy webpage on the policies page of the website that links to that privacy policy, and that then advises patrons which of the services are just linked to on our library. Like Hoopla, for example, it's a third party where it like basically when you put in your library card, it gives you access to their, and then you're basically hosting your information on their server. So it explains to patrons that for those third party portions, and it lists which parts of the website those are, that of course we have our own privacy policy, but we can't be the police after we sign a contract necessarily with them. So they are, by agreeing to use those things, they are entering into basically a contract with that third party partner as well. And of course, those partners are very carefully vetted. We always try to use partners that are used by lots of other libraries and entities, and tons of research and board input goes into any new contract. Sorry, you're looking at me now. I'm trying to get this thing into the drive, but my screens are weird. So I'll put my face back up there in just a second. But
so anything
yes.
anything relevant to this, Tori, what those third party folks that are like Hoopla was a very good example. Sierra is another one. If they're storing data for us, we probably need to take a look at those contracts and making sure that they are under contractual agreement to maintain that company. I'm sure they are. I just would like to.
So yes, they are, and that's what I'm explaining. So it's right here. I don't know if you have access to just our regular website, but if you go to the library drop-down menu and you go to policies, the same page where you look at the request for reconsideration, and then that second box of Christian County Library policies, if you click on privacy policy, it says here, it has a direct link just to that portion of the manual that you're looking at in the manual part, the privacy policy. It asks people to contact us if they have questions. And then it outlines vendors with whom we share select patron data. Christian County Library shares select patron data with some third-party partners as a part of normal library operations, even though the CCL privacy policy governs and restricts all third parties contracted to collect, administer, store, or utilize patron data or library records. Here's their privacy policies as well. So a third layer, besides making sure that when we make a contract with them, it includes noticing them of our privacy policies. We, of course, make sure that they are compliant with everything that we do, and that we also make sure they have their own privacy policy, and then we post their privacy policy on our website. We're not required to do that. Like you, John, when I came on, there was a privacy policy, but it was not really fleshed out, and I had a lot of concerns about third-party information, and that was not really fleshed out. So that's why that policy, came to be, because I helped create this idea. And so then we also on that page have the vendors with whom we don't share patron data. So the following vendors are partners with which we don't share patron data. So some of them require for them to provide your own information. So for example, if you use Overdrive or Overdrive Kids, if you go and you do that, you have to proactively type in your information for them. You don't just use your library card. You'd have to type in your information directly to them, and then they're storing your data. So trying to help the public understand, and we do get questions about this, so we refer them there, because you and I are not the only ones concerned about privacy. A lot of people are, and they should be. So anyway, that's how it works, basically.
Right. So I think that would be something to look at, just to make sure that all of this stuff, and it's a bunch, is being protected.
Yes.
Both in-house and out of the house. So I have, like I said, I have an updated data privacy document that is much more robust than this.
Oh, okay.
And
so is that attached or something? Where's that?
It's in the folder.
Oh, okay. We'll look at
I
it.
can
I'm
s-
sorry. I just didn't.
I can send you the link.
No. I have the folder. I'll look at it. You shared the folder this time, so
Where the heck is it?
I'll share it. I can look at it.
Okay, yeah, just look at it and just tell me if there's anything in there that we would have a difficulty adapting to. So
Well,
just
what
let's
I would
move on.
suggest is if it makes sense. Oh, so just quickly, I can't upload things to your folder. So maybe I guess I can. Yeah,
You
hold on.
should be able to.
I think I can view, which is fine. Here, I'll just email you the Ashcroft thing and you can include it. But I mean, it's also on his website, but just so you have it, because I think it'd be useful to have, it's a very important piece of the policy part. I think he did a great job in kind of summarizing and trying to meet the moment in terms of making sure that people could have trust in what their libraries were doing and making sure that libraries that hadn't already thought through some of the issues that were making people uncomfortable had an opportunity to do that. And of course that went through a really long public review process and was edited and et cetera. So, but yeah, so what I would say is, I mean, so basically look towards the one you have and figure out maybe which portions we could add to this policy to make it, because the one we have is very specific to our operations here. But if you have new or better language that you think improves it, then I'm all for that. I mean, and I'm sure any new director of the library would be for that too.
Yeah. So the big thing to protect the library is data retention. You don't want. There's a couple of reasons why you would not retain things longer than you need to.
Yes.
Something, it saves data storage space, and the other thing is it reduces the risk of exposure to the patron. So
John, I completely agree with you, and we are on that. That Renee actually, when she came on, that was a goal because the state actually puts out a list of data retention that's specific to different government departments within our branch. So we can go directly to the Secretary of State's office and the Attorney General's office to get those data retention schedules. And of course, we're certainly retaining, if anything, like you said, there might be areas where we're retaining too much. So actually before, in the last year or so, Renee, had other things kind of on her plate, but it has been a long-term goal to have kind of a data. In fact, we even already kind of got a committee. We just haven't been able to work to do sort of a soft audit of what we're already keeping and to make sure that we are keeping everything we have to. Like some things we have to keep forever. Board, this video, we have to literally keep like forever. We have to keep it forever. There's no board stuff that we ever can get rid of if it's actual official records of board activities and board decisions. However, like extra copies of packets for board meetings, we don't need any of those. We need one official copy, but we don't need tons of extras. There are other, there are certain schedules that are dictated by employment law for how long you keep someone who sends in their resume unsolicited who you don't interview, someone who sends in a resume and you do interview, the notes from those interviews, which obviously are protected closed records because they're personnel records. But so we know all of those things. And in many of those areas, we're already only keeping what we do. But I think there is a project for a new director that all of us would be excited about, which is to kind of clean up. So part of the process you guys have to understand too, is that because in 2017, we had 1.5 branches because we had a storefront in Clever that was only open some hours. And then we went to 4 full-time branches. Part of 2018 until now, like all the changes in that time, none of it was really driven by different people on the board. It was really more driven at its nucleus by just expanding into being a larger library system, literally like moving stuff and moving them from this storage closet to that storage closet, digitizing what we could, but that process is still ongoing. And I think, again, a new director, hopefully who will stay for a significant period of time. I think that would be not only a great thing for them to do, but a great early long-term project because it helps them get a feel for what's here, right? So sorry, that was long-winded, but I love this stuff. Policy is definitely my jam and a part of my job. So So
Right.
I'm the right person for this. I love it.
Yep. So, data retention, big thing. Privacy, another big thing. You have the updated document that I have.
Yeah,
It
I'll
is-
look at that and see if there's stuff that we don't have. I think that's great.
Yep, we'll bring it in. Smoking, I'm not touching. I don't think this is pretty well thought through. I don't have anything on this stuff, and I don't know if Diana did. Diana?
No, I didn't really have anything on that.
Just
Code
real
of
quick, John,
conduct.
I don't mean to go into this, but is it in where do you have I'm looking at your folder. Where's the policy? Oh, confidentiality policy. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
confidential.
Okay, great. I'll look at that. I like that.
Yeah. So
Okay, great.
let me get back to this
Yep.
thing here, and let me share this tab.
Yeah, any other questions? Keep going through.
Okay, so we talked about this one.
Yeah, I heard that conversation. Weapons are tricky, and we don't have to go into great detail, but it is basically what you said, is that we are not, yeah, I heard you mention something about how we're county property and that covers it. We are not county property.
No, I know. And here's the thing, it's kind of ambiguous out there. I think that if you ask some people, they say concealed carry is not restricted in a library. You ask other people and they'll say, yes, it is. So I think we just don't touch this one until Robert can weigh in on it.
So the last time we had a lawyer review it, which of course that attorney was Harry, but then we did our own research and looked at we have internally all the other libraries in the state to talk to, right? Because there are library directors meetings. It is my current understanding, and again, I wasn't the full-time executive director, but I think we would know if it had changed. The current law, and honestly, every legislative session, there's almost always half a dozen or more changes to conceal carry, kind of where you can and cannot have personal weapons. But we cannot, at least last time I know, I think this policy is updated, is that, and that's why we cite that and link to that policy, that we probably can't stop them. I think internally we have trained staff on procedures that the one place is where if someone comes in brandishing a weapon or even visibly carrying it in a way that is impeding other people's ability to feel comfortable being in the library, that we can ask them to either go in a different space, like could you take that, could you continue to do what you're doing, but maybe in the study room, or to ask them to leave or to put it in, to store it in their car or something because they're making people uncomfortable. But we don't really have much of a legal right to push it in our space. Now schools do. So this is something, for example, like if you go to a town hall meeting at the schools, they can prohibit weapons, right? But like in our meeting room, we cannot.
I think we probably can. The way I read 571.030,
yeah.
Subdivision 8, it says, who knowingly, a person commits the offense of unlawful use of weapons.
Yeah.
Except as otherwise provided by 571.101 to 571.121. I haven't read that part yet. If he or she knowingly, and then go down to sub 8, carries a firearm or any other weapon readily capable of lethal use into any church or place where people have assembled for worship, or into any election precinct on any election day, or this is the money part, or into any building owned or occupied by any agency of the federal government, state government, or political subdivision thereof. So I think the library district is a political subdivision.
Yeah, we are a political subdivision. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that applies. I mean, I think if they carry a weapon and they're guilty of unlawful use of a weapon.
Yeah. No, I guess you're right. And honestly, it does say that. So honestly, everything I was saying might be an old conversation, because it looks like we did update it here.
Well, this
to say individuals are prohibited. So I don't know what you're saying, John. You don't think we should change it? Just leave it individual.
I wouldn't change it. It says that are prohibited by law, and that covers it.
I may be remembering like an old conversation before that was passed in 2019.
Well, the statute, it says, I'm on the Missouri, the mo.gov website, this official statutes.
Sure.
And it says that this particular statute, it says effective August 28th, 2023. So that that kind of suggests to me that they tweaked it, and this is the most recent version was updated in 23.
Yeah, so maybe, in fact, that's one I would love to have Robert look at what we have here and see if we could even have stronger language.
Let's see if they have. Oh wait, they've got they've got the history of it. It looks like it's been. Yeah, it doesn't look like it changed from the 2021 version, and then the version before that was 20.
Well, I think part of why, I mean, I remember writing some edit of this, and that's part of why we referenced the statute itself, because we knew that it changed a lot. And we didn't want to, say too much.
Well, and then it also references 57101 to 57121, and that's basically looks like those sections. I haven't read them all, but it talks about concealed carry.
Yeah.
So then I guess the question would be whether one of those sections gives you a carve out under the concealed carry statute.
And that might be, that might be why I'm remembering that basically the bottom line was like, if they're brandishing a weapon and making people uncomfortable and they're not, law enforcement or military who are explicitly exempt somehow. I mean, of course you can't tell that by looking at them if you're working at the front desk, right? But I would want somebody to really look into that. But if we can make it stronger, that's fine with me.
Yeah, somebody who knows gun law, because there's that's like the whole area of the law, and I'm not conversant on it. I can read the statute and tell you what it says, but there's a whole body of law about concealed carry and transport of firearms and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know that. There's actually, if Robert doesn't know it, there's a guy down in Stone County named Mark Rundle. He's an attorney, and he is a gun guy, and he is up to date on all the, he can cite you all the gun laws chapter and verse. He's so familiar with it.
Well, yeah, what I would say is, so I think just procedurally in the past, if you have an expert like that, similar to like if we can ask for other, I can ask other libraries too, if they're, how they word their policies. I mean, that's always a great resource to see, because some of the bigger libraries have, full-time attorneys on staff and that kind of thing. So just to see how they do it. And then the idea is we would try to adapt it with some of that. And then usually the final pass is having our attorney look, not necessarily be involved with the editing, but we make a recommendation based on outside research and then pay them, just so that we're minimizing the amount that we pay Robert.
Yeah.
So it'd be cool to, it's a minor thing in the big scale of all this, but it wouldn't be bad to reach out to him, Diana, and just see if he knows anything about libraries specifically. And I can ask other libraries if anyone feels like they can have stronger language than we have, if we want to, I think obviously we want to respect people's Second Amendment rights. But it is a mixed public space similar to a school. It's not a school.
It's 571107 actually looks like that statute gives you the carve outs from the concealed carry statute, where you can conceal carry if you have a permit, but here's where you can't. And it's and it's a pretty long section.
Gotcha.
I'm just kind of skimming down here, police station, polling place, correctional institution, courthouse, any meeting of a governing body of a unit of local government.
We're not a unit of local government, though. We're a subdivision, which I think is a little different.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'd have to read this more closely. I'm just skimming down.
Well, you know what? You and I can look into that, and then at least we'll have some of the background done before we ask Robert.
Yeah.
So now I will say, when we serve as an election precinct, for those days, it is allowed to stop people with weapons. And that's something that the county clerk's office, I think they might even bring signs with them that they put up at the door. I can't remember. But Ozark used to be a precinct, but they don't need us there in Ozark now. They have enough other locations, but Nixa has been one for a while, just because they need a spot.
Okay.
It probably wouldn't be bad to reach out to Sheriff Cole and ask him what weapons would be considered illegal. I mean, if they're coming in with a machete or some other thing that is threatening, just to see what the sheriff would say.
Well, I think the bottom line is that code of conduct you guys looked at last time, that's sort of the bread and butter. I mean, we can always try to make that stronger, but at the end of the day, even if someone has a weapon they're allowed to have, if it is displayed or brandished or just, like on them in some kind of way that feels threatening to other people trying to use the library, then we have a right to try to ask them to mitigate that. And if they sort of refuse or become belligerent, then obviously we can always, I mean, we very rarely, but we can, call law enforcement to help us enforce our policies if we need to. Because again, those are the governing rules of sort of interaction with that part of public government. That's why, it's your guys's sort of domain.
Yeah, actually, I think reaching out to Sheriff Cole is a great idea, because I think he's going to be like my friend down in Stone County. He's going to know all those. I would imagine, is going to know all the interaction of the gun laws and have all that information at his fingertips.
If you guys have a good relationship with him, I mean, I think we work more closely with the Nixa Police Department, but it couldn't hurt to ask both of them just to make sure that he knows that we are not a county building.
Right.
Because they are able to put restrictions in place, and we are not a county building. We're our own thing.
Well, maybe I'll take that as a homework assignment to just see what the reason I say that is because they're the enforcement arm of that. And if a desk reception person or somebody calls the police and they tell us, I'm sorry, you're in the wrong and I can't make this person leave.
We would never call just because someone had a gun. We would call if someone is threatening someone with a gun or making other people uncomfortable, or we've asked them if they could put it out of sight or put it back in their car, and then they've become belligerent and there's a behavioral sort of problem. So we would just because someone has a gun, we would never be.
I think there's already law against brandishing a weapon, but that works. Okay, so we've got a little bit of
that's an interesting side one.
Display, distribution. I think this is spot on. We don't want people dropping political propaganda all over our desks and tables and stuff.
Which one is this? The display? Yeah, that was a more recent. I mean, 2019. We did that. That is so the idea there. I mean, you read it. I think I heard you talking about it, but the idea behind what we do right now, and this was recommended by library staff as a way to manage it, is if someone comes in and wants to advertise anything, they have to go to the circulation desk and leave it with the branch manager. And then each branch has a designated area. So I think it's in Sparta, they have like a bulletin board kind of by the, and they don't post everything. They post anything that, sort of the branch manager can kind of have some curation. And if they don't know whether or not to post it, they can ask, but it's not, people can't self-post because that way you don't get tons of stuff.
So the other thing, and this kind of sounds like electioneering. So when you have someone who's doing what they call electioneering, they're handing out push cards or something. I did think that maybe we should not have them blocking the doorway, but I think discretion is probably better to have on that one. So
John, I listened when I heard that part of the meeting. I was so happy to hear you bring it up, honestly. So when I was a child, Ozark was a polling place. I don't know if I voted for the first time at the Ozark Library. I don't know if you did, Diane.
I've always voted at the First Baptist Church. So
yeah. So I was going to say, I knew we were kind of in the same area, but but we don't do it there anymore. But we've only been a Nixa polling place for a couple of years now. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad he's reading that with a critical eye. That is something that we've already kind of internally been discussing about how to do that. It is more complicated than it seems because there is a law, but as you may know, there's some controversy even with local public schools. I think with Nixa, there's even a lawsuit trying to figure out because if you are, so we are not a full government, like we're not an arm of the city or state government. We're a political subdivision, which like a school is kind of its own carved out category. And we are allowed to do some modifications because of that status that they are not. So we're able to have slightly more restrictive is my understanding. I don't know because we don't yet have a policy, but I guess my point is, I think the starting point for that would be to let staff know during this process that you would like them to start, you know, me if I'm still here, but, you know, certainly the library's new executive director, to have them start talking to the first place, I think would be the county clerk, because they're the ones that bring the stuff. And we can kind of talk through how they make their agreements on electioneering, what they recommend, because they're the ones who have the most direct day-to-day interaction with those rules.
So with the regard, so that actually self-manages. I was an election supervisor.
Yeah.
And they actually come out with tape measures. This is the first year I did it. They actually tape measure from the front of the door out. So they'll do that. We don't have to worry about that. I'm talking about independent of that.
Okay.
Can they come and start politicking? You know what I mean?
So I mean, I think if it's during election day, as long as they're away and not blocking any entrances, and the way that we've done, I mean, the petitioning policy is also something that can always be looked at. So we do have people from time to time of all sorts. So I think the main purpose is, just like with our meeting rooms, what we have to be careful of is not to be absolutely sure we are not accidentally favoring any particular kind of speech, right? So we can't say like, oh, you're a church, so you can't do it, or oh, you're this, you can't do it. So whomever wants to do some sort of petitioning, what we do is we have them go to the person in charge, which are deputized by branch managers to be kind of like assistant managers. And then every branch has drawn up their own internal locations that they designate that are far enough away from the entrances and whatnot that people are not hopefully being bothered. And if we have had instances where, so in Nixa, for example, it's kind of that grassy area over by the bench when you first walk in. And so they'll designate, and if it's like muddy, they might say there, but we try not to block walking access completely to the sidewalk or to the entrances. And then we have very strict policies against someone, because this happens, like standing in the parking lot and talking to people right when they get out of their car. Or we've had some people that will like follow people to their car. So anytime anything like that happens, that's against what all of our branches allow as well. And so we really we will allow it. They have to kind of check in. And if they're out there without checking in, we don't tell them go away. We say, hey, you know, you have to check in. The branch manager gives them a copy of like, here are the locations that we are okay with you being at. Here are the rules. Like, don't touch anybody. Don't harass anybody. If they say no, leave them alone, don't follow them to their cars. And then if they break those rules, and we have had some organizations, it was right when I first started, who more than, you know, they'll get kind of a warning to stop, but if they do it more than once or twice, then we tell them they cannot petition there anymore. So, so it is a pretty, it's an important one to know about.
Right.
So.
And you got it back to code of conduct, so that's good.
Yeah, and we're always looking for ways to make that stronger. And also, like, we want to know that that is to protect everybody. We're not trying to be punitive in any way. We just want everybody to feel like they can, you know, just similar, honestly, to the collections. We want everyone to feel like they can come into the library and feel safe in their person, not be bothered by other people trying to use the library.
Yep. Okay, so I think we're good there. Film and photography, I didn't see any need to change any of that. Diana, your thoughts on any of this?
Wait, which one are we on again?
Film and photography.
Oh,
Is
no.
What page is that on? Did we go down?
It's
Oh,
on
we went
page-
past all the EEOC stuff.
Yeah, it's film
And that is something, just so you know, like, if I know there's a lot going on federally, you know, Mary is the one who has and your new, the library's new executive director will also have access to kind of the SHRM, the Human Resources organization. And so anytime there are changes in state employment law and things like that, we get that from that organization and also from the state. So occasionally there are tweaks that have to be made to those, but those are somewhat out of our hands.
Yeah.
Public use of library technology. By the way, I heard you compliment this one. Is this after? I don't, let's see, what page are you on? Yeah. Oh, I maybe went down too far. Is that page 15? What page is that? I can't see.
Yeah, 15, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I skipped down. I'll give you that compliment in a minute because that was another one where I was impressed with your ability to pick out some good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's probably, I don't see it in here, but
Yeah,
filming and photography
sure.
photography of a minor is really, it's kind of foreboding. You don't really want to film minors, especially if they're not your kids.
Well, so that's why we try to get permission in writing from everyone, minors and not minors, and or oral consent if that's fine. I know for Nicholas's department, he does a lot of training, and so do all of the programming departments. That there's all sorts of rules about if you can kind of take like non-identifiable, like the back of people's heads. You'll often see that in marketing materials. So yeah, but I if there's more to put there, feel free if you have better, examples. I am of the opinion that policy is somewhat of a living document. I mean, you don't want to change it for no reason all the time, but it should be something that is constantly reviewed and updated to make sure that it's meeting the needs and that it's something that needs to be there and that it's supporting what it's, sort of accomplishing the goals that it's there for. So.
Yeah, I think we probably have it covered that this should be in consideration of confidentiality and that kind of thing. I mean, some people just don't like to be photographed. So, I think that kind of covers it.
That being said, though, I mean, there is this thing. So a library is a very interesting First Amendment space. It's what they call a semi-private. So you don't have the expectation of privacy because it's a public building, but it's also not wholly public. Like you have some expectation. It's like this weird gray area of the law. So if someone is in the library, potentially they need to know that they might end up being filmed or whatever by other people. But if someone comes in and is just taking videos of other people in the library conducting library business, like checking out books and things like that, they are not allowed to do that without the permission of the people doing it. Like checking out the books, I mean.
Right, or what books they're checking out, because that is protected.
Absolutely.
So I don't think there's any edits there. It pretty much, it's broad enough that it gives us the ability to act on something that doesn't look, it probably isn't correct. Yeah. But it's not specific enough that we'll have to change it every year, and
that is such a good point. I feel like, I mean, you guys definitely clearly had that in mind when you were talking through things, but I think anytime, like I remember in the bylaws, just the part of the bylaws you guys were just talking about, the part that you guys recently changed about when we had added all that section about like just trying to help trustees know how boards work with the one voice and all that. Part of what we did in that set of edits was that portion used to say the library board will have their regular meetings on like the fourth Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. And so we changed it. I remember Harry looking through all of that and we sent it to him. Like Renee really systematically tried to change just a few policies a little bit in order to make sure that we wouldn't have to change it all the time. Like if we wanted to change the meeting date. So now it says something like, because we just wanted it to be more easier to do daily business. So we wouldn't have to, like, if you guys wanted to have a Friday meeting and you voted to do that, you could do that. So instead it says something now like once a year, the trustees will agree upon a meeting date and time for their regular meetings for the next year, or something like more general, so that you're not like tied into Wednesday at 6 p.m. or whatever it was. So I think that's so smart that you want to operate that way. That's definitely a great way to go about policy making in my mind.
Yeah, so policies are primarily for us to to guide the operations, which is why you're here. The bylaws really help us govern ourselves as a board.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And we went, I think the previous boards, and I don't want to, call anybody out here, but
Sure.
we got too micromanagement with the bylaws. The bylaws shouldn't be like that. They shouldn't be like a policy manual for the board. The board really isn't doing operations. The board is a governing body, and
Sure.
and so to your point,
That's fair.
I would take some of that stuff out of there, which is why we got.
I'm assuming you guys will have edits to that. That's fine.
Yeah, so we do, and I don't, some of it we've already done. We've done a piecemeal, but let's keep moving through here. We're actually making pretty decent progress. I don't have, when Diana and I went through here, some good stuff. Hygiene, it's unfortunate that some people have to be spoken to about these things, dress code and hygiene, but that's got to be in there. Use of the facilities. This stuff's all just good guidance and operational. EEOC or EEO, I mean, that's a legal thing. We got to have that. Harassment, I mean, of course, you got to have language on those things. Yeah, zero tolerance on workplace violence, of course. I mean, these are not things I would ever want to have to deal with or have to make edits on.
And we do, it's not often, but it is helpful when we have the policy, if there is someone who, it's one way to politely approach. We're not generally going to kick someone out if they come in without shoes or sleeping in the library or things like that. But often the approach is the staff will print out the policy so they have something to just make it clear to the person. They're not trying to be punitive just to that person. And then kind of go over and approach them knowing that they might be going through circumstances or not know the rules, and just have it in their back pocket, sometimes literally as kind of like a, excuse me, sir or ma'am, could you put shoes on? And if they resist, kind of say like, well, here's why, because it's affecting other people's use of the library. And also we have this policy. So it is helpful to have it written down. So that's usually
it is. And because people who have been thrown out of a few places will say, well, where's that in policy?
Correct. Yes.
You've got it.
Yeah. And the library code of conduct itself, I don't want to say for sure, but I think most of our branches have that posted somewhere too close to the doors. Just that code of conduct part as kind of the distillation.
Public use of library technology. This is all good stuff.
I was going to say, that's what I was going to say. I jumped to that, but I heard you say you liked it. And if he's listening, our first full-time IT director, Joe Morgan, took it upon himself to really do, months of research and came up with that. And it's like you said, I think it's still, I'm sure it can be improved over time, but he did a really comprehensive job when we adopted that. I was so proud of the work he did on that.
Yeah, the only thing I had a question and concern about is the hotspots. We don't currently have any filters or any.
So, I was just talking to Heath about this because we just had Mornet come in, our internet service provider that's like state subsidized for schools and libraries. So we get discounted internet because we're a library. They just upgraded our internal networks, wired and wireless. And he was saying that there might be some new technology available. So the reason the hotspots are not filtered is because they aren't able to be filtered. Because people check out the hotspots and take them home. So they're not dependent on our network. If they're using if they use them in the library on the library's wireless network, but they're not, they're connected to like a phone company, right? So there's no way to, at least when we got them, which was during COVID, is when we started that lendable collection. And I've heard you ask that in the budget meetings and stuff a couple times too. Like that whole bill is really just for those hotspots. I think we have 50 or 60. They all came through grants that they're constantly checked out. They're a very popular collection. So I think the idea is that, they're checked out. I did hear you ask last time, and I'm almost 100% sure that like our other library of things, they can only be checked out on an adult card. So if a child has access, it's through their adult.
Okay, so a minor child can't, that was a double whammy for me. It's
I mean,
like,
I suppose if an adult checked it out and the child uses it at home, then that, that's on them, but we aren't responsible once they leave the library, if that makes sense.
okay,
But that's part of why we stuck this in here. So because our library computers, because we get that discounted internet through the state, they are SIPA filtered, the Child Internet Protection Act.
Yep.
So it does filter out. Now there's a way to override that filter that administration can do, because a couple times a year we'll get someone who is doing legitimate research and websites are blocked that they need to look at that research. They just have to come to the front desk and say, hey, this is being blocked. Here's why I need access to the site. And then we can, it takes a day or two actually, but then we can unblock it for them if they're doing some kind of research that the internet thinks is shady. But the SIPA filters are a requirement of receiving that discounted like government internet. So all of the wired computers and our wireless networks have SIPA compliance. But it's just those hotspots. So I think that's technology based. I think we have Verizon. We've been through a few different brands, but I think we found Verizon had the best service in the more rural parts of the county, and we ended up getting most of them with them. But if they were to come up with a way to filter them, then we might do that.
yeah, I used to work for Verizon. I don't know if you knew that. And I was on their IT digital security team. There is absolutely a way to do that. But in any case, I don't want to focus on technology.
Sure, and we do have a specific kind that's like for public services, but Heath was going to look into that, so I can let you know if he finds out anything new.
Sure.
And in the interim, we put that in there. I mean, it's been a couple years back, but we just wanted to make sure to make that clear to people, so they didn't, because they might come to the library thinking it's filtered and then not know that those are not filtered. So
right,
certainly, if they're worried about it, they shouldn't check them out and use them.
Fair enough. And this stuff, public computers, printers, and other devices, I think this is all relevant, very good for operational stuff. I guess overarching to support the policy, is there training documents for the staff so that they know what the policy is and how to handle these situations?
I mean, of course, they all have this policy document and it's on our website. And then certainly there are procedures for kind of everything that happens in the library. Sure.
Okay.
But those are things that, again, managers, not even necessary. I mean, the executive director would oversee those things, but those have been developed and in use by, the branch managers get together all the time and they're constantly updating operational kind of training manuals and front desk manuals. And, I mean, the working in a library is a super technical job. I mean, just every time you check out a book or put something on hold, all of those have multiple technology steps in the system. So all of those things are laid out. But I would just say, I don't think that the board, honestly, you used some phrase I loved. I wrote down something like, those are blades of grass. We may not, I mean, really, if you want to come work here, that'd be but I mean, I feel like it's a lot of minutia. So I don't,
right.
I don't
I'm not looking for
the board to.
I just want to make sure that we've equipped people, like the minutia of how to put a book on hold, or checking in a book, or checking.
Sure.
Those are usually kind of cheat sheets, and they're kind of technical steps. So,
well, no, it's all, I mean, I think that's how we've always operated. I'm sure most government agencies do this too. So the policy manual is our guiding governance documents. Like when Robert was saying, you guys have the right to set policy. No one has ever disputed that. I think that's part of your job, is to set the policies that then the chief executive and administrative officer that you guys hire, the library director, that person is then in charge of making sure that the staff, whatever sort of procedures that they have developed internally, are not just within, but supportive of, working within the guidelines set by the more overarching policy that you guys are, set, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So yes.
We kind of just skipping through this stuff because it's
anything you see, that's part of why I didn't try to send an email, because I didn't know you both had time to think about it too exactly. So I'm just kind of trying to let you ask questions along the way.
social media posts and interactions with staff, whether the library maintains social media accounts or personal accounts, must not compromise data confidentiality. Why did we flag this, Diane? We should put something more in here.
I think, trying to remember why we put that in there.
Oh, I kind of remember.
Remember?
So, yeah, so I think this refers back to, so if the staff is using social media to promote the library, that's one thing. If the staff is just doing social media for other reasons, not work related, that's another thing, so I don't know how this overlaps with the handbook, the employee handbook, but
It might be the same. So there are some policies that are both in the public and the policy and the personnel manual.
okay.
I think the one in the personnel manual is even more fleshed out about, not talking about basically like that, because of course, as you know, there's even in today's era, even more and more, the Supreme Court just had a couple new decisions about this too, that there's a pretty clear line at the moment that, even if someone is employed in their day job doing something, that they have a right to First Amendment protection in their personal life. And where that would conflict with work is if they're sharing confidential data, if they are representing themselves to be speaking for the library, right? Like if they're like on their personal account and saying, the library feels this way about something, then that could be problematic. But otherwise, or if they're on there saying, today at the library, John came in Tori came in and picked her nose while she was in the corner by the bathroom. Like if they're kind of talking about work stuff on their social media and revealing patron privacy, like letting people know that I didn't use a tissue and picked my nose, then that obviously would be crossing a line. But it's a gray area, certainly.
Yeah. So I think that one, I don't know how much we need Robert to look at. Maybe I take that one off.
It can't hurt. It's up to you, whatever you want to do.
I think if it's already covered in the employee manual, then we don't probably need to have a legal review of this, but
Sure.
I would ask, what was the reason, the decision to remove the employee manual from like being able to get it as we can download policy?
We've never, as far as I know, we've never publicly shared because that's for personnel. That's like the internal, how people work at, like most, I think I could be wrong, but I don't know many companies that have their personnel manuals on their public website. Is that what you're saying?
Right, but we're a government entity, so I'm not sure how much.
I don't know of any government entities that have their it's sunshineable. In fact, I think somebody just, wasn't it Gretchen that just sunshined it? Gretchen just sunshined it. So you guys have it, right? I mean, we can give it to you.
I don't know.
So it's discoverable, but the point is it's not, in my understanding, I mean, the board looks at those things, but it's how the library itself is governed. Basically the chief executive and administrative officer sort of makes those policies under the guidance of these other.
So I guess the question is, has the employee handbook that you have today,
Yes.
has it been, not that I'm trying to incur more legal costs, did it go through legal review?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And I do think that is absolutely something that could be, it's been a couple of years. You have a new attorney, so you could have him look at it. But that would be something you would talk to your executive director and say, hey, it's been a couple of years. In fact, it's constantly updated. Like I said, Mary and sometimes Renee, so I guess probably not me in this interim period, but the executive director and the HR, the key HR staff, they are on all sorts of government listservs because there are policies that change. When you, I remember it was a couple years back, there was a succession of changes in state law that we would get emails directly from the state saying, in that one, it was interesting. It was like you were required to have a bunch of new protections for survivors of domestic violence. Like, so if someone comes and has documentation that they are, sort of like a police report or some other things that they're going through, that employers have to give them unpaid, like not fire them if they need a couple days of unpaid leave. There were all these like very, very specific new protections that were required. And so some of that we don't even get to choose for sure. A lot of it we get to choose, but some of it we don't even get to choose, basically.
Right. Well, some of the things that I'm used to seeing in those policy developments are where staff have a temporary restraining order against an abusive spouse or something.
Yes.
You have to protect them on the in their workplace, but you also have to respect their privacy, because they obviously don't need all their troubles made known to everybody. So
no, it was fascinating, and we love those kinds of protections, being in there. But and that, I'm assuming that's something that the new executive director obviously will get deep into within the first couple months, trying to really understand what exists,
Yep. I think this moderating the comments is, that is.
And Nicholas that's part of what Nicholas will talk about. He actually, he of course wrote that policy many, many years ago, or at least updated it. And it's tricky business. I think that Mary asked for moderation of social media comments to be a part of what he talks about when he talks about, sort of all of the sort of press interaction procedures. And it's tricky. So it's quite interesting, but it's tricky because social media is supposed to be used not just as a billboard, but as an engagement tool. But if you're engaging with people, then there's going to be problematic speech sometimes on both sides, and trying to, as the neutral government arbiter who is not trying to favor any kind of speech, it gets very complicated.
Yep. No, I'm looking forward to seeing what Nicholas says for us on how.
And I think he's interested in having you guys know, because I do think he puts a lot of time into those kinds of thoughts. He's very diligent in trying to make sure that he's fair-minded with all of those things, and that it is not sort of ever favoring one kind of speech over another. And it's hard. I think a lot of government agencies, I think at the county, I don't know if they decided to stop it or do it, but a lot of government agencies have just gone to not really using it as an engagement tool because it's problematic, and just have made it into a billboard where nobody can comment. And I think there's some kind of law, Robert would know better, but where you can't have both. Either you can only post or you can allow comments. It's complicated,
It is. Use of Christian County likeness, that's a kind of a no-brainer. You don't want people stealing your logo. Unintended children policy, I didn't see any problems there with that one. Diana, we didn't flag this before, so.
No, I don't think we had any problem with it.
I know I heard you talking about the age of consent and all those. It's complicated.
It is. I mean, when I was growing up, we used to just ride our bikes to the library when I was, 12 and 13. My parents weren't with me. I would be in violation of this policy. But
so, the 9, when I started working here, I wondered what the age of 9 was about. And so the law does not say it's illegal for a child to be alone at the age of 9, but it does say if a child is under the age of 9 by themselves without a parent or guardian, and the parent or guardian has to be, whatever we say in here, above the age of 16, like that's 17. Yeah. So that's all like cobbled together from the law. But if they don't have someone with them, someone can report them to social services, and social services can come. So it's not so much like it's an immediate arrest, but it's the age under which someone can make a report for a neglected or abandoned child.
Just from experience, have you invoked this very often?
This is something we need. I don't think there's room for you to be able to, you can't go under the age of 9. You could go over, if you wanted to make it even slightly more restrictive. I mean, in Christian County, as you know, we don't have public transportation, and most of our branches, there are not very many children that can actually walk to them. There's almost none that even have schools in a real walkable distance. I mean, Nixa sort of, JTSD is probably like a 20-minute walk away if you're walking straight here, but there's not a lot of kids that are coming on foot, maybe on bike, like you said. But yes, I mean, not tons, but it's actually more, we see it more with them when they're in the library. So this applies inside the library, and that's where we have to enforce it the most. So you might have parents that come in with kids of different ages, and they just like put their younger kids in the children's area and then go look for books themselves. And
Right.
that is not allowed, because we are not, just like with the materials they select, we are not equipped or qualified to be babysitters for people's kids. And it's just dangerous. Then we don't want that liability. We're not, we don't want to have that risk for the library or for the kids. So
Yeah.
if they do that, often what we'll do similar, like I said, print it out. So we're not trying to be mean or, but kind of go up to the parent and say, first kind of find out who the child belongs to, and then go to the parent and just kind of explain, like, I know it may be difficult because you're over here looking for your own books and your child does not want to stay with you, but you cannot have your child sort of unattended in another part of the library without you being present. If they're under the age of 9, they need to be with you, or you need to be with them. And that is one of the biggest protections, obviously, for the types of things that I'm assuming you were thinking about in your first conversation, where, again, I don't think we promote or give access or have any sort of age appropriate books, but the library is very carefully organized so that books for different ages are very carefully placed in different sections. And so, again, you don't want a child that's just wandering off. So if they're under the age of 9, their parent has to be with them. And if they're not, we make sure they are, because staff do not. So if we see any child that looks like they're under the age of 9 and the parent is not with them, we will find a parent and explain the policy and make them get with their kid.
Okay. So library cards, this is and we only have like 20 minutes left, I think, on this.
I think this has been really good, though, and we can do more next week, but I'm curious what you say. I did listen to your conversation. So just to be clear, what Diana was referencing was not a new policy, but it's something that we've always done, that Renee explained was one of the many things that we can do to parents that want even more granular control over what their kids are checking out. So like I said, one thing is they can register for a Cool Cat account, and then they can track everything that's checked out on their kid's card, right? Even if they have a youth card. Of course, the first pass, and this is going to be like a revisiting those board meetings, again, Diana, especially for you, and John, you were there, you just weren't in the seat. So, you didn't maybe listen in the same way that you do now that you're in charge of explaining it to the rest of the world too. But the first protection that's in place for kids for every card, like it says in this policy, is that anyone under the age of 18, okay, so 17 and younger, they cannot get a library card, period, unless a parent or guardian signs for that card. And I think Mary is one of the ones that pointed out at one of the meetings that on the back, when you're signing it, it has a special space if you're signing for your child, and it says, the parent is responsible for the child's use. You can have a card if you're under 18, but your parent is responsible for what you check out, and also for any fees or, sort of repercussions for your use of the library, right? So, and that's, in that case, it's mostly if they lose a book or whatever, the kid doesn't have to pay that bill. The parent's paying the bill. And also, if, so at some point people wanted to know, well, what if my child is over the age of 9 and in the library by themselves, and I've allowed them to have a card? So that's the first pass. Like, you don't have to get your kid a card. You get a kid a card, they have it. What if they check out things that I don't know about? And the way to protect that exists. And again, on that parent resources page that we made on the website, which I think was a fantastic thing that came out of those board conversations. I know they've been messy and hard and complicated sometimes, but it was something that when Renee was hired, she wanted to do. And it really helped us focus the information that we provided there to kind of try our best to address some of the concerns that we were hearing over and over again in the board meetings. I mean, it was already kind of in progress, but it helped us hone into what people were concerned about so that we could make sure the information on the parent resources page was really addressing what those sort of hot topic issues were. So the card, making sure that that you know how to turn on your Cool Cat account if you want to be able to have a list of everything that they check out and when it's returned. And so that is where, again, and I can't look at your Cool Cat account. You have to look at your Cool Cat account, but you as the parent, if you have kid cards, they're linked to your card, and then you can see, so I can see everything that my kids check out basically. And whether they've returned it, how long they've had it, if they've renewed it. I can see if they request a book from another library. I can see all that stuff. And what Diana was referring to, which is not listed in here, we can add it. It's not really like a new policy, but it is a service we've always provided, which is, and it's sort of technology based, but Sierra allows you, when you're checking out books, there's a way that you can have a note pop up for staff. And so we can always put a note in upon parent request. So all a parent has to do is ask. And what we did was put that on the website so that parents that wanted that service could ask for it. We've only had a couple people do it, but if it makes their experience better, then it's absolutely worth it because it's not that much work for us. So a parent comes and says at the front desk, I want a note to say that my child is not allowed to check out any books if I'm not with them. Because even though you can see on the Cool Cat account what they've checked out, I suppose that means that you could have like a 13-year-old in the library who checks out some books and you haven't looked at it yet, and maybe they get a chance to read them and you don't want them reading them before you check their Cool Cat account at night or something, right? So so that will pop up. Now, to be clear, it doesn't invalidate their card. It doesn't really stop it, but it does notify staff that before, it won't let that, they'll have to close that note before they can check things out. So, I mean, of course, there could be error in how that happens, but it gives a pretty good chance that the staff will say, there's a note here saying that your parent does not want you to check this out without them being present in the library. Are they around? If they're under the age of 9, they already have to have a parent there, so it's not an issue. But if their parent is not there, then that's there. So that is something that could be added. Just so that it's another, I think Diana said something like, I had to really look for it. So it's another place where they could see that. I think the most obvious place right now, if you went to the parent resource page, it's on there in multiple places. So because I think that's one of the things that your era of board leadership, Diana, that first kind of wave of trying to find ways to help people.
To help parents.
Yeah, so that parent resources page, if you kind of scroll down, it's in a lot of places, but especially at the very last section there is monitoring content. And if you kind of scroll through those, it goes through how to search the catalog, how the subject headings work, where it has maps of the locations and the materials. That's something Nicholas did before all the controversy started popping up, of just letting people know where is the children's section, because, you know, some of our libraries right now are just one big box. So that way we actually have those virtual maps now where people new to the area can virtually visit the library before they come if they are concerned about certain areas, so that they can even tell their kids before they get there, like, hey, this is the area, I don't want you going over here. Like, when we're there, you have to stay over.
So
under the age of 9, they got to be with a parent anyway.
So one of the things that I actually just learned a day or two ago was that minor children's activity in the library is also protected under the library protection, data protection. So basically, here's the use case.
Yeah, tell me.
A 9-year-old with an all-access card could, in theory, check out a book that their parents may not want them to have, or maybe the parent wants to check and see what books they've been checking out.
Sure.
The parent cannot, by law, access that information. Did you know that?
That's not true, though. Not at our library.
Well, then we're breaking the law, because minors are protected. It's a gap in the law right now. I think the way
is it in a library context, or I'm trying to figure out exactly
in the data privacy. data information privacy for libraries, minors are not exempt. Remember, the only way minors are not exempt from that data protection. Their data is protected as well, even from their own parents. That's the way the law is written. It's written badly.
And
but,
this is it's like a law in Missouri
yes, ma'am.
or a federal law? I would be
No, I
interested.
think it's a federal law. I could send it to you, but in any case,
Yeah,
I
I'm
think-
very curious. Certainly, we don't want to break the law. I mean,
no,
if,
well,
if
I
we,
think I think the way you're doing it may be a way to. So, for example, if the child's library card is under the parent's account, well,
Yes.
then there's no separation of data, right? There's
Correct.
no. So, if you're doing it that way, you're not breaking the law. I'm just saying if the child has their own card, their
So
own.
there
record,
are, interestingly, there are plenty of, especially in bigger areas where there are, kids are able to get places on their own. There are plenty of libraries that don't require a parent signature for anybody under the age of 18. Sometimes it's for very small kids or not at all. But that is not new. Since the beginning of Christian County Library, we've always had a pretty conservative policy on who can get a card. And for minors in particular, we've always had a pretty, now, I mean, if that law has changed or shifted,
No, it hasn't.
I would love to see that for sure. Send it to me.
Yeah,
But
I'll send it to you.
I mean, I don't think so, because like the Cool Cat account is not really the kids themselves. It'll be nestled in their parents' account. And the kids have to be like, when we create a child card, we scan that signature and keep that on file. And then we have like the way you do it within the software at the moment, which all library software is clunky because it's not a big enough market to have like some of the biggest, best, fanciest stuff. But you create it and it's connected, it's like linked to the parent's account. So it's not, there's a different, you toggle to a different screen, but it's all a part of the same account. And that's how Cool Cat works too. So you have the parent account and then you can, look at any of your nested accounts. And by the way, people can opt to link in, like I've linked my father's account. Bruce is linked to mine because sometimes he wants to, know if his book is checked out or not checked out or whatever. And then I can look at his account. He's given me permission. Like I didn't get to do that on my own, but you can link to other family members too, if they allow you to, other adults.
Yeah, I think that's a nice utility as well. We've got 10 minutes. Let's see how far we can get on this. Checking out.
Or at least even just put a pause and let me know. I hope this has been helpful.
I think so too. So
And I know we have another meeting set for next Friday or Thursday. Yeah.
No, I think we're 2 weeks out because next week we've got to really focus on looking
Oh,
at the candidates, right?
Yeah, let me look. I thought it was all in the same. I thought it was 3 meetings in a row.
Let's see.
No,
I have it
that's
on the
one.
website, but I didn't post an agenda.
Showing
think
that we
I'm-
got one on Thursday at 4.
Yep, we have one next Thursday at 4. So
Yeah,
we
that's-
have, you guys have the closed meeting to do the
The review.
closed meeting on the 9th, and then Thursday, the bylaw, and Friday, the budget. And then nothing is scheduled until, nothing else is scheduled. So then I guess we'll get to you might have another closed meeting to do more interview stuff before the board meeting, but.
We don't have anything on the 17th. Would it be better to move this to the 17th? Because Don, you're going to be worn out by next Friday if you got these 3 meetings.
Well, the 17th that's coming up on Easter
that's
weekend.
Easter week. Okay, that's right. I forgot about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking.
And then I'm assuming whatever you guys do next Wednesday with the applications, you're going to have to meet a couple more times, if nothing else, to start some interviews. So,
Right. So why don't we,
so we could set more, so we can meet, if it's still okay with you guys, we can still meet next Thursday and Friday. I'm okay with it.
Okay. Yeah,
It'll be a lot of meetings, but
the next Wednesday that one is starting to make me shudder a little bit because I haven't dug into the executive director applications yet, and I'm going to have looked at those by next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Well,
and
what I
kind
would
of
say,
building on
Diana, is next Thursday's policy. I mean, we can cancel it if you want, but if you want to continue, I feel like you and John already did a lot of this work. So if we just continue with this, if you guys have found this helpful, just kind of talking through some of your questions, I would think, but in one more session, we could at least get through it one time
No,
and then figure out what we need to research.
I'm okay with doing it next Thursday. I'm just, again, I've got my work cut out for me before Wednesday to go through all
Yeah.
the applications and try to score them and have something.
And to be honest with you, because that's all in your, I mean, Mary and her staff have been helping me get all those in the, I haven't even read through all those because I don't have to, because that's one thing that's your decision. So I just get to be there and write down the names and answer any questions you have, you know.
Right. If you want, why don't we postpone the meetings on the 10th and 11th?
Okay.
Because we really need to go. I mean, just so you know, Diana, we've had we're up to 36 candidates right now.
Oh, okay. Last I heard it was 33, but yeah, there's
And I hope that made sense to you, John, what I said. I don't want to get too off topic, but we're not in a quorum or anything, but you know, you've had your first consideration date, so you can consider new ones as they're coming in, but you're not legally required to talk about anybody except for that first consideration. I mean, you can, but you know, just because it hasn't been kind of taken down, and you might want to leave it up because 36 seems like a lot, but you really don't know till you start talking. By the time you get to interview, some people might already have taken jobs, you know, et cetera, et cetera. It sorts itself down pretty quickly.
Right. And some of them are out of state and all that. So we have to look at, you know, are they even going to be able to come in for an interview? Do we do that Zoom call or whatever? I'm okay with canceling. I don't think we have like another maybe couple of hours to do
Sure.
on the policy. So let's take a break so that we can focus on the candidate. You know.
So I'll cancel the 10th and the 11th. And then I just want to put this in here. This goes for the other committee too. I think this is so useful. I love talking about this stuff. If you want to have a policy meeting once a month for the next 3 years, I am down. I love talking about policy. I want it to be as precise and protective as we can make it for patrons. That being said, as someone who had to catch up by watching it, and then I feel like you guys had to do some of the double work, I don't want to dissuade you from continuing. I think we can do a couple more before the new director is seated, but there's a huge chance that they're going to want to talk to you about all these things too, because whoever they are is going to come from hopefully somewhere with some library experience, but even if not, they're going to come with all kinds of insights that our brains don't have. So I just want to put out there that I don't think you want to go too far with this right when you have a new person coming on, because I think you're going to want their expertise. I hope we find someone that, you know.
Well, it's not just that, Tori. I don't want to have to put a product in front of the board in total twice.
Sure. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We'll just do it once.
Yeah.
So let's take a break. You can